Hello and welcome. This is Eye on Port, the program that brings Ghana's port, maritime, and shipping industry closer to you. This program is proudly brought to you by the Ghana Revenue Authority, GOIL PLC, Serene Insurance, Ghana Link, and the Meridian Port Services. The program is powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, and our media partner is the Business and Financial Times. Viewers, this week we are centering our discussion on port marine operations, which is an essential part of everything that goes on here at the port. We are going to examine the importance of this set of activities we call port marine operations on the global supply chain. To help us do this, we interacted with none other than the harbour master at the port of Tema, Captain Francis Kwesi Micah. Take a listen.
Let me begin with the basics. I just want to find out from you, what is marine operations?
Yeah, actually, when we talk about marine operations, we are referring to a series of maritime procedures, that is actually aimed to ensure a smooth movement of cargo from various terminals. In other words, we will have a catalog of events that eventually will end up with the cargo coming to a port,
right,
and of course, to the industry. And for the fact that we see the port as the conduit to the nation's commerce, that particular enterprise or activity is very, very important and critical.
Okay, so how has this particular function of port marine operations evolved over the years? Obviously, you started from a certain point, and over the years, you have had to perhaps adjust, add one or two things, modifications and all that. Can you run us through or walk us through how this evolution has been?
Yeah, with that, I must say, it all boils down to the sophistication that the world, has opened itself up to. The type of cargo, the volume of traffic, the size of vessels, and interspersed with the handling activities. In other words, once we used to have just small crafts coming in, it did not require the sophistication of heavy-ended tugs to handle them. And the advent of electronic chart development system, that is a requirement for mariners, it will mean also an improvement in the caliber and proficiency of pilots who do that human job of bringing the vessels in. And that interspersed with the other activities like the signal station, the mooring men, the azimuth stand drive tugs, etc. It will mean that it has come from a standard operational level to a much more sophisticated end of activity.
Okay, so in all this, I know that we cannot talk about the global supply chain without mentioning port marine operations. Can you tell us the link or the linkage between these two?
Yeah, okay, let me make this, put up this scenario. Okay, say when we talk about, say, politicking of the land or for government, once we talk about, say, the White House, then we're talking about the citadel of administration in the U.S. In Ghana, homing into Ghana, when we say the Flagstaff House, then we're talking about the seat of government from where all the activities. Now, for the port in particular, we want to term them as the nexus in this same paradigm as to where everything starts and everything ends.
Right.
And to deliberate or to go more into it, we can talk about the supply chain link. Now, we have various modes of transportation. We can have the inter and we can have the intra. So once you're talking about the ports in other areas around the world, we can see that the cargo might have commenced its startup from a factory somewhere in a landlocked area. It could be freighted to a particular place, say by a train.
Right.
And then eventually it could come by small freighters to the major port, where eventually they get boxed up for them to make the sea voyage to another country or another place in the same region or in the same country.
Right.
And this chain of activities culminates in the port being the very critical point of the activities for seaborne trade. We're talking about numbers, and we are referring to about 90% plus of seaborne trade is what takes care of the world cargo. The rest taken care of by the aviation industry. And now, so it could be the combination of road, air, rail, and eventually coming to sea. But the bulk of it is balkanized.
Intermodal?
Exactly. Yeah. That is intermodal. Now, intramodal would be when a bigger vessel, say, comes to the port of Tema, and then it will download some of its cargo or discharge some of its cargo to small freighters or to small cargo vessels that could be serving other ports, because the big vessels possibly could not make way to the smaller vessels or to some part of the region. So we could have transit points where the bulk of the cargo. I can go into specifics. Now, when we talk about this breakdown, say for the port of Tema, for example, we'll have balkanized cargo, say, from the Mediterranean.
Yes.
We can talk about the port of Algeciras or Marrakesh or whatever in Morocco, and then we can have a bulk coming in right from there, which has been transshipped from various ports in Europe. They will end up, say, in Algeciras, and then they will start their journey west or southwards to West Africa and beyond. We could also have a balkanized cargo coming from the Asian end, say from Singapore, from Malaysia. Actually, most of this cargo could have also been originated from Japan, from Korea, and then from China.
Right.
Now, once they end up, say, in Singapore, a place I love to talk about quite often, I mean, it means that the cargo then eventually will be shipped in volumes, high-ended craft or ships that will make all their way, say, to the West African end, and end up in Lome, Tema, Lagos, and Abidjan to do with the distribution.
Now, we're talking international trade facilitation. And I know, again, that there's a linkage between marine operations, port marine operations, and trade facilitation. How does this happen?
Okay. Now, I think the IMO, that wonderful organization set up under the arms of the United Nations, is very much responsible for that facility. So we have the facilitation committee. Actually, it's one of the IMO weapons that they use. And in that, they have a standardized form that would aid to facilitate trade. And by trade, they will have designated forms that will cater for, say, the crew list, that will cater for the bulk of cargo, the type, the description, the DG cargoes, even the vaccination list, etc., that are standard and accepted by both ports and ports all around the world. In that, once these things are brought to be inspected by local officials, by this I'm referring to customs, immigration, port health, plant quarantine, etc., including narcotics bureau, etc., it becomes a standardized form for the facilitation of the vessel's entry into a customs regime port. And once that is done, it means that now the aperture is now open for trade to commence, for cargo to be discharged, and then for the other tributaries of trade like the clearance, the forwarding agents also take over, and for the cargo eventually, or for the product eventually to end up in our homes, at the factories, to help with the running of industries, and then for the final consumer to make absolute good use of.
You cannot have port marine operations without incidents. We know there are issues of safety, security, and all that. Can you tell us some of the issues that come up during your operations?
It is all cataloged into so many spheres. I mean, I think we can all go back to recollect by law or by, by history, what happened on the Titanic that culminated in us having one of the major architects of the maritime regulation world, and that is SOLA, Safety of Life at Sea.
Right.
Then we had issues with pollution. The Amoco Cadiz, I don't want to delve into all those things, but it also resulted in another strong pillar in the maritime industry called the, how do you call it? The aspect of controlling our theater in terms of environmental control. Okay. Then we had a recent case of the 9/11 incident. I must say that was fast-tracked, and the intelligence believed that eventually, possibly, since they had used the airplane, potential was that the next time it could be through the maritime industry. It could be a ship planting some explosive, something that could create mayhem in a port. So they developed the ISPS. And it therefore falls on the maritime industry, and especially the Harbor Master's Office or the Marine Operations Department, to ensure that all these safeguards are in place. So once we have the MARPOL regulation that I referred to that caters for pollution, the SOLAS that mainly borders on safety, the ISPS, and of course one is to do with the training of personnel at sea. It puts it in that same intricate web of how, together with the application of all these regulations, we could have the fundamentals right in making sure that safety aspects are catered for. And when I talk about safety, I'm talking about safe movement of the vessels to and from port, the safety aspect of the equipment that you'll be using, even the boarding features, and then even in case of emergency, how the personnel on board could protect themselves by launching life-saving appliances, etc. So that is one aspect. Now, in terms of pollution, and we know the effect it has on the environment, our flora and fauna, in the ecosystem and the unbalancing act that it goes with. It will mean that any act of pollution needs to be well detected, but importantly, it has to be prevented by the implementation of standardized equipment and the inspection, regular inspection by the administration. In Ghana parlance, we can refer to that as being coming from the Ghana Maritime Authority. That are mandated to have the port state control under Abuja MOU to work out those modalities. But importantly, when it comes again to the security, under the guise of the ISPS, the Harbour Master actually also doubles as the port facility security officer. And he has a bench of assistants that also work with them. And regularly, we have the Port Facility Security Committee meeting up to discuss trends or developing trends as far as our security is concerned. In fact, the ISPS naturally serves to be the stock of interface between the vessels that are coming all the way from the high seas from another terminal and making an interface with the port. And that link is so critical because it could go either way. So we go about in establishing declaration of security, etc., to ensure that both parties are sure that, look, my vessel is safe in your port, and then the port facility also ensures that, look, there's not going to be any added-on threat to the vessel while they are making that interface with the port. So that is how it works out. For security, for environment, and for the safety aspect.
Safety. I'll come to environment, but let me still dwell a bit with the issue of security and safety and how you tell us as a port, zeroing in on Port of Tema, we are faring.
All right. I think security has been very, very much positive. In fact, it has been above average in the West Coast. We have a basic threat, or we used to have a threat, which was basically on lines of stowaways. Stowaways to a larger extent based on the control measures that have been put in place has virtually been nipped in the bud. What we are even currently seeking to do is even to prevent the use of Tema Port as a place of landing stowaways that had been picked up by vessels, or for stowaways that have secreted themselves to vessels within the sub-region and then wanting to as it were, drop them in the port of Tema. And I will say that this has been, to a larger extent, based on the regularity of training, drills, and exercises, not only at the corporate level or at the port level, but we have also been part of international exercises, not to mention the Obangami exercises, etc. And then we have interagency exercises also that borders on security. We have had some with immigration, and then we've had some with the a very sophisticated exercise that involved even the 1BN forces coming in to, actuate a bomb, improvised bomb, as it were, as a part of an exercise, which actually is also a requirement under the ISPS regime. So yes, to a large extent, the threat is very minimized. We do not have any other incidentals that comes out of Tema that will, as it were, bring down the level. So for most part of the time, we have been operating at security level 1, which means that the normal security situation that should pertain in any other port.
And so we are apt and in accordance with international best practice. Goes
to the teamwork of all security agencies that operate in the port. We're talking about the customs, we're talking about the BNI or NIB to be precise, we're talking about the immigration, and of course our diligent men of the GPHA Port Security Management Division.
Right.
All right, that was some education from the Harbour Master at the Port of Tema, Captain Francis Kwesi Micah, on what we call port marine operations and its impact on the global supply chain. Now, let us take a few of your comments on the subject that we have just discussed. After we go on break, we'll be back with more news. How are tugboats, as small as they are, able to pull big merchant vessels to port? I'm curious and I wish to understand. My name is Phoebe. Hi Phoebe. Captain Micah agrees with you that the tugboats are miniature compared to merchant vessels, yet he explained that the tugboats GPHA have acquired have a 60-ton bollard pull, enabling them to be strong enough to undertake vessel operations. This is from Ernest Pamphol, a staff of GPHA. He says, Captain Francis Kwesi Micah is a very competent master mariner, technically steering the affairs of the Tema Harbour to the admiration of all.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is, you still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance. Oh, Ajima, tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
MPS Terminal 3 is Africa's new state-of-the-art container terminal at Tema Port. For manufacturers, agro-processors and traders, the new port means business can be done faster. This infrastructure boost will improve Ghana's port handling capacity, connect more trading routes, and oil the engine of growth for the economy, creating greater opportunities across all sectors as Africa's markets merge and become the largest trading bloc globally. MPS, we connect, you thrive.
Welcome back from the break. Now, stakeholders within the West and Central African maritime industry met to dialogue on global best practices when it comes to vessel clearance at port. We were privileged to attend the opening ceremony of that particular event. This story will tell you more. Public and private sector stakeholders within the maritime and shipping industry of West and Central Africa during the week assembled in Accra, Ghana, to deliberate on best practices in vessel clearance at seaports. The two-day Global Best Practices in Vessel Clearance workshop, organized by the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network in collaboration with the Convention on Business Integrity and hosted by the Ghana Maritime Authority, had participation from Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Senegal, and Cameroon. Associate Director at the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, Vivek Menon, indicated that the efforts of the network, whose membership constitutes over 180 private sector companies, is towards promoting inter-industry private-public sector dialogue that will tackle corruption risk in the maritime sector.
More importantly, I think our goal is to make business operating environments as less costly and as less cumbersome as possible. Because in the end of the day, if you look at the broader blue economy discussion or ocean governance discussion, we strongly believe that integrity or operations through ethical practices is fundamental.
According to the Deputy Director General of the Ghana Maritime Authority, Yao Akosa Entry, the complex nature of the shipping trade makes it susceptible to corrupt activities, thus echoed the need for stronger collaboration towards ending the menace.
Corruption has become one of the industry's main challenges. Social extortion by officials, even small amounts, is very detrimental, as minor delays to a vessel's timing comes with a very high cost of operating. Corruption in the maritime industry not only generates additional operational costs for the maritime industry, but endangers the safety and well-being of the crew, that is seafarers, and also acts as a significant barrier to trade and development.
Danish Ambassador to Ghana, Tom Norin, urged the public and private sector to work together to put transparent measures in place to prevent corruption in order to harness the potential of the blue economy for Africa.
Let me emphasize that efficiency, transparency, and integrity are simply imperative prerequisites to harness the gains from the blue economy, to ensure a high degree of African participation in the future of global trade.
The Minister for Public Enterprises, Joseph Kujo, stated the government of Ghana's support for integrity, transparency, and efficiency of the shipping industry to boost sustainable trade and commerce.
There is compelling need, therefore, for the maritime sector to formalize actions to combat bribery and corruption by collaborating and encouraging all stakeholders in the ship-shore interface to ensure compliance with national and international laws which prohibit bribery and corruption. Additionally, I will urge all countries and stakeholders present to work against corrupt practices by constantly focusing on establishing anti-corruption measures and or improve them when the measures already exist.
Let us now turn our attention to the global stage and pick a few international port, shipping, maritime related news. Denmark has launched the world's first digital ship register to increase security related to ship registration and ship trading. This week, Danish Maritime Authority rolled out a new digital ship register to ease the workload with faster and more efficient workflows for everyone working with the registration of ships in Denmark. The digital ship register went live on 16th January 2023. The register is expected to contribute to an extra layer of security and control in relation to ship registration. Concurrently, new legislation on ship registration comes into force. This includes both amendments to the Maritime Act and the new executive orders on ship registration. Singapore-based shipbuilder Sepcom Marine hosted a naming ceremony for the first of a series of LNG hybrid tugs specially designed for domestic service in Singapore. The Singapore-flagged vessel was christened JMS Sunshine by Ms. Wong Lee Ling, former executive director of Sebawang Shipyard, a wholly owned subsidiary of Sepcom Marine, and former head of repairs and upgrade at Sepcom Marine. Sepcom Marine plans to build a fleet of tugs to progressively replace the existing diesel-powered fleet operated by its subsidiary, Jurong Marine Services, and a licensed operator of the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. The company commissioned the design and construction of the world's first LNG hybrid tug in 2018. This brings us to our Word of the Day segment, where we introduce words, jargons, phrases, terminologies to you so you can get familiar with them. For this week, our phrase of the day is terminal charge. Terminal charge is a charge made for a service performed in a terminal area, typically referring to handling associated with receipt, delivery, or inspection of cargo via land-based operations. It's now time to take a look at the schedule of vessels that have berthed in the ports of Tema and Takoradi, and at the anchorages of both ports, and those expected in the coming weeks, plus the Bank of Ghana exchange rates, which you may need to know to clear your cargo with. This is where we draw the curtain on today's edition of Eye on Port. We hope you've been informed and educated. Remember, all Eye on Port content can be found on our YouTube channel, Eye on Port. Subscribe, like, and give us feedback. Thank you for watching.